Global warming. This is a belief which is viewed by some as a major issue and others as a minor issue. While there are arguments that it is undeniable that the Earth is heating up, views with which very few climate scientists would argue, others are impassioned in a belief that global warming is a myth. If you're not sure, then look at the UK's weather and climate since the beginning of 2014. So, should the world be more worried about global warming and be making better efforts in its aid? Are any attempts to make a difference just futile or needless? Let us explore.
In the UK, we produce about 280 million tonnes of waste a year, quite a substantial amount of waste. About 30 million tonnes of those 280 million tonnes comes from household waste. The rest comes from commercial, construction and quarrying. In terms of the drivers for recycling, there are a number of different drivers. Firstly, obviously we need to reduce the amount of waste we're producing. We need to stop the amount that's going into landfill. Secondly, we need to think about the resources that we're using, and this is probably a more fundamental driver. Sometimes we have very scarce resources and we need to make the most use of them rather than wasting them. We need to think about our products and processes, design things so that they can be reused, so they don't become obsolete. And when they do become obsolete, design them so that they can be recycled, so that they're easily recycled.
But on the other hand to this, let us now see why people should not recycle.
Firstly, recycling can be seen as not being cost effective. For example, paper and plastic in some towns is not cost effective to recycle. Secondly, recycling is causing some councils to now refuse to pick up people's waste who do not recycle. This is causing a number of issues. Firstly, people are fly tipping. Secondly, people are illegally getting rid of their waste. This has severe consequences on the environment of these areas, and the impacts are worse than the impacts associated with not recycling.
But is this really true? While recycling prevents wasting resources which are sometimes scarce and prevents unsightly, filthy landfills from filling up, not recycling could prevent fly tipping and illegal waste disposal. So what has this made you think now? Would we be better off recycling more or not recycling at all?
Even back in the 1970s, we were talking about the possibility of emissions of carbon dioxide causing changes to our climate, collectively termed global warming. Now, a lot of people have argued over the years that it's not happening, other people have argued that it is happening. But we tend to run the world on scientific consensus, and the consensus is that it is happening, it is real, and the evidence is mounting up in favour of that argument. We need to think about cutting greenhouse gas emissions across multiple sectors. Now, the most popular one where people look to cut emissions is transport, things like cars and planes. But we need to remember that transport only accounts for 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Another 50-60% comes from industry and households, and 20 to 30% actually comes from agriculture and land use. So bearing that in mind, yes, we could all try and drive more economically and environmentally friendly cars, but actually the bigger gains need to be made in the energy use in household and industry, and in how we produce the food and products. And this is where issues of carbon footprinting and carbon labelling have emerged, so that we can understand that process and where we can make savings in emissions.
The scientific consensus which the world is run on is that global warming is real and is happening. So this would imply that we really do need to cut greenhouse gas emissions. But now let us see what the arguments are opposing this.
Many people believe the science underpinning global warming is not true. This is exemplified by Harvard professor Willie Soon stating that he felt that the science backing up global warming was farcical. Secondly, even if global warming is to be true, many people believe that we are already in such a stark position that if we try and cut our CO2 emissions to resolve global warming, it will not have an effect.
But in contrast to this, the world is run on a scientific consensus, which is that global warming is real. So, which side do you now think is the correct side? Is global warming real, and therefore should we cut more greenhouse gas emissions? Or is it all really false?
In terms of saving water, it's a bit of a no-brainer really. Saving water saves you money. It's a good thing to do. Now, we can all do things around the house to try and save water, but perhaps the bigger impact is going to come in terms of how water is used around the world, and again how it's embedded in many of the products and services we use. We need to understand that the water being used in products and services that we buy could be taking place in an area where water is scarce. So we need to understand that actually it's not just about saving water in the home, it's also about understanding how water is used globally and making sure we don't increase water stress in the many regions around the world where it's a significant problem, and we could even be denying local populations of valuable drinking water or impacting upon fragile ecosystems that are also dependent on that water.
But now let us see what the arguments that oppose this are.
The whole practice of saving water is redundant because the world has a natural mechanism for recycling water in the form of the water cycle. While there is the fact that reprocessing water takes up energy and reheating water takes up energy, the world's future doesn't lie in cutting out our energy usage completely, but finding clean, carbon emission-free ways of producing that energy. Renewable energy sources are the way that you're going to cut carbon emissions and stop global warming, not saving water.
We can recycle more to avoid wasting valuable or scarce resources, but not recycling could prevent illegal disposal of waste. The scientific consensus that the world is run on shows that global warming is real, but it is believed and exemplified by some that the science underpinning global warming is false. And we can make efforts to save water to benefit fragile ecosystems which need the water, but saving water and the energy water usage takes up is not what the world's future lies in. And now, we've done all that we can. The rest is down to you. What do you now think is best? Thanks for listening.